and we're underway and racing. Stay on the brakes, goodness me, what a launch! The outside of turn 1 and takes the lead of the race.
The Almost Pro Championship is back with another round here today, ladies and gentlemen, and we are here in Italy for what will be a very, very exciting Grand Prix ahead of us. 6 drivers take to the circuit for the first time in 2 weeks here in APC, and to take you along the way, my name is Joseph Black, aka Cockcast, and alongside me will be, as usual, Stab Body, as... well, he's a little bit late. He's always a little bit late, as is the case. And no worries there, as we will get underway very soon. And the action will be beginning for qualifying here in Italy. A very, very good circuit. And, well, it should throw up some exciting surprises. Always does Italy. This is a little bit of a preview of what you'll be getting around the Monza circuit. 3.599 miles, 11 turns, and 5.793 kilometres of circuit are what the drivers will be taking here tonight in APC, and it should be a very, very good spectacle with all of these straights. Some of these drivers may well try 0-0 wings, but we'll have to wait and see as to whether they do. And qualifying, of course, precedes the race, as always, and our 6 drivers here in APC traverse the circuit. Shack Ethan Shackleton in the sole Ferrari this evening, and that's going to be important as we head on in a minute. Then George Chapman in the sole Williams at the moment. Lucas Erracini supposed to turn up, hasn't done so yet. Daniel Riley, of course, aka Daniel Riley. Not Aaron McGurk. It is the Stuart Woodards in 4th and 5th as it stands, the 2 McLarens. And then Brian Moore, as always, in last in the kick Sauber, of course, I joke. But yes, those 6 drivers, potentially 7 after our week break, have remembered that the Almost Pro Championship exists, as a few of us, Luca included, may well have forgotten. But yeah, we head around this circuit ready to start our qualifying session, and there's probably tech issues, so I will be ready to sort that on the fly, as per usual, with some of my streams. But yes, there we go. We are live on YouTube. We are ready. We are waiting for what should be a very exciting qualifying session. I've just noticed as well that the audio is muted on the game, which is a good start. But it is what it is. There's always those teething issues when you come back after a week break. And hopefully they don't affect us too much, as that is Chapman going up to the top with a 19.7. Daniel Riley in P2 with a 19.8. Shackleton will be going around the circuit now and trying to improve on the lap time that he'd set, or the lap time that those drivers had set before. So will the 2 Stuart Woodards, and Brian Moore is on his outlap. He's only just come out of the pits and he'll be attempting his first stab at this circuit. As well, Carl Stuart Woodard appears to be stuck, I don't know if that's the word, behind Shackleton, literally right behind Shackleton, and he's going to get in that dirty air of the Ferrari as they head around the first couple of corners on this circuit. Getting that DRS is important, but it's just teething issues, I think, although this could give him a lot of slipstream as they head down the straights, and it could ultimately benefit the McLaren as he looks to come up to the line. I'll get that scary looking thing off your screen. Because that is what I use to... Woo. Go away. Not paying for you. Get audio up. Around the final corner come these 2. Has this benefited Carl Stuart Woodard at all as they come up to the line? It's going to be a 1 minute 21 for Shackleton. It's a 1 minute 21 for Stuart Woodard as well. And they are split by 0.07 of a second, or 0.007 of a second even, as we've had the latest issue come in for this. But I believe we may well have a co-commentator for this evening, and well, was supposed to, if he'd have fallen for it, be alongside each other physically in the comms box tonight. We are going to have to put up tonight with Owen's voice once again in the comfy and the safe the comfy and the safet of his own room. But I am joined by Owen. Hello.
Hello there, and it is great to be back for the Almost Pro Championship for round 8 at Italy. Of course, Monza, one of the most iconic circuits on the entire calendar, and qualifying is always very, very exciting here. So hopefully we have a great qualifying session. And pole times generally around Monza are fairly close. I expect pole tonight probably, I think it will be an 18.6. So let's see.
18.6 is the
And I think that
call
will
in
be
there.
Ethan Shackleton. I think it'll be Ethan Shackleton, and it will be an 18.6 or 7, around that ballpark, I think.
Well, it's funny that you mention Ethan Shackleton, actually, because his teammate has not rocked up for this evening. That is right. Andrea Chenkovan is not here this evening. He will not be racing around this circuit, which should throw up some exciting results and should make the title ever closer. Of course, his teammate Ethan Shackleton closing in on Chenkovan at the top as Brian Moore comes across the line with a 24-7. Ethan Shackleton just 31 points behind now. If he takes victory here, he will be just 6 points behind his Ferrari teammate. Looking down the grid, it's Kyle Stewart-Woodard in third on 82, Daniel Riley taking the position of Aaron McGurk in P4, of course. McGurk now an inactive driver being replaced by George Chapman down the bottom of the standings. Connor Stewart-Woodard in P6 with 62, with Brian Moore on 57 just behind. So that battle for P4 or P3 potentially even lighting up. And then you've got Lucas Seracini down in P8. Hasn't rocked up yet tonight, but we're hoping that he will do. He is on 36 points with his new teammate George Chapman on a grand total of 0. Looking at the constructors then, and it's Ferrari who've almost breached the 300 point mark. They're on 299, over half of the points ahead of McLaren in P2. So 299 to 144, and then 125 for Kick Sauber and 98 for Williams. So a great opportunity then, isn't it, for Ethan Shackleton tonight?
Yeah, definitely a fantastic opportunity. You know, championship is so tight between the two Ferrari drivers. So hopefully he can win this race, tighten it up, and then we'll have a real championship battle on our hands, and potentially an uphill battle for Andrea Senkovan.
Yeah, potentially an Andrea Senkovan climb, or Andrea Senkovan coming under pressure from Shackleton. Shackleton, who's on he's on an in-lap right now. He's set a 20.1, which was an improvement on his last lap, but still not up where Chapman and Daniel Riley are at the moment. 19.7 and 19.8 respectively, and Shackleton in a bit of his own land here, just about 4 tenths behind Daniel Riley, and just about 5 and a chunk tenths ahead of Stewart-Woodard in behind. Those yellow flags out as that was Chapman potentially going off the circuit, going very slowly either way. There's no damage to that Williams. He should be all right. But yeah, Shackleton looking very interesting for tonight. It's an open goal, really, for him as he comes into this race with the intention and the expectation that he's going to close in on Chenkovan's title charge. But of course, you have to finish first in order to finish first. And that is exactly what he's going to try and do as he heads into the pit lane now. And he will be getting ready for his third even lap time around this circuit. Stewart-Woodard, 5 and a bit tenths off, is already also in the pits with Brian Moore as well. While Daniel Riley attacks this circuit. He's a 10th down in the first 2 sectors, so potentially he might be getting ready to go once again. George Chapman just started on the lap, as has Kyle Stewart-Woodard. Kyle Stewart-Woodard is now coming up to the line. Now he starts his lap and his attack around this circuit. Daniel Riley slowly around the final corner. Is he going once again around this circuit? It looks as though he is. So an interesting strategy there at the start of this lap, going very slowly up to the line. You'd think he would have gone slower through Parabolica. I think he might be trying to fuel save, actually. I think could potentially be what's happening here. And Daniel Riley trying to prepare himself for one more lap. We've got just under 8 minutes left in the session. And your prediction, Owen, for P1 Shackleton, sitting down in P3 and not really looking to close in, especially with George Chapman on a run like this, 3 tenths quicker in the first 2 sectors.
Yeah, I think having looked at it, well overshot the pole time. Just because I think it's because I haven't done a league race on Monza since the start of F124, and the start of F124, the game was well, it was about a second and a half quicker. Time trials around here were the world record. Sorry, excuse me, world record was in the 1 minute 17. So I think that's partially why I overshot, and it was just a stupid mistake from me. As George Chapman goes, he won again within 1:19.311, so a very quick lap there.
Yeah, and well, there's an improvement for Carl Stewart Woodard as well, going up into fourth place as or holding fourth place even. Was Daniel Riley? What is he doing? Is he going to come into the pit? Yeah, he's going to come into the pits this lap. Not sure the meaning of the extra lap for Daniel Riley, but he comes into the pits regardless. And the only non-Xbox driver here tonight is looking to launch an attack. He currently starts on the front row of the grid. And with 6 minutes 30 left in the session, we've still seen no sign of Brian Moore after that first run. I still think, as well, there's been no sign of Connor Stewart Woodard. Yeah, exactly, whose only lap time was a 20.7, as Brian Moore's was a 24.7, so 4 seconds off of the driver in front, and 5.4 seconds off of that pole lap. You say you overshot it, but we will have to wait and see, as maybe they could hook something up. These drivers coming now back into the pits. Very odd time, I think, for the circuit to be about to go dormant with about 6 minutes left in the session. This is generally when the third runs are put in, and then they come into the pits, and the last 3 minutes are dedicated to the fourth run. So everybody a little bit out of sync from what you would expect. Lucas Erracini out of sync with the entire league. He's going to be taking some penalty points if he doesn't join in the next 6 minutes. But yeah, for these drivers, they're all sitting in the pit lane. I believe that could have been somebody coming out now, potentially a Williams of George Chapman. But no, I think everybody's sitting in the pits and preparing themselves for that final run. Just want to get your opinion on this, because I had this mini debate earlier on that I could expand on later. 0-0 wings around Monza. Thoughts?
I personally wouldn't. Just because I feel like in the race, your tyres are going to absolutely fry. Tyre degradation is not necessarily a big issue here, but even though you'll be stupidly quick on the straights, in the second sector, you will just get left. Personally, my setup, I believe, was 7 front wing and then 3 rear wing. So not exactly high, but I think just having that extra little bit of downforce helps, especially in the race. Although 0-0 wings, if you can control it, is a viable strategy, but it's whether you can keep it on track in the second sector.
Yeah, it's that second sector where you gain the time, because, of course, only 11 corners around this Monza circuit. And how many is that? It's over half of them that come in the second sector. So huge. In that final sector, in fact. Or just under half, in fact. But in that final sector, there is only 4 corners, you could argue. Parabolica and the Ascari chicane. In the first one, I'd argue there is 3 with the first chicane, of course, and then the long curve into the second sector. So really so crucial, especially to hook up that second sector. My wing, with my contact from the esports team, the wings that they recommended actually is 0-0. So, I mean, I've not seen any success with it yet, but I haven't seen any failures with it yet. So we will have to see tonight what all the drivers decide to do. But for now,
What contact within esports was that? What team was it?
well, I mean, there's the SKG, but listen, we're up and coming.
Right.
We're up and coming, and there has been, to be fair, a couple of the setups that we've got have been stolen from other proper, like, higher up esports teams. It seems to be
SRC?
that sort of level of driver feels as though they can wrangle that car with 0-0 wings around the circuit.
Yeah, 0-0 wings is definitely easier on F124, just because of the handling model being, the noses are significantly sharper in this game. than they were in 2023. You know, if we were talking about F1 23, I would have immediately said hell no to a 0-0 wing style. But it is possible in F1 24. But I feel like just having an extra little bit of downforce does help, especially in a race. Potentially, if you're running traction control, you could do it. But personally, I wouldn't. I'd go safe and take just a little bit of downforce.
Yeah, I mean, that's fair enough, and it will be interesting. I think it'll be a question we pose to all the drivers that come in for an interview. What sort of wing setup that they go on, because there's many different ways you can take it. By the way, 2 minutes left in the session, 3 drivers out on circuit, 1 driver out on a lap, and that being George Chapman, our current pole sitter, who's over a second ahead of P4. So Williams not doing badly then to be sitting over a second ahead, and then a further, or around 5 tenths ahead of Daniel Riley in P2. Not improving in that first sector. So he may well have peaked to the 19.3, but we'll wait and see where the Williams ends up going as he heads around the second sector now and tries to just throw his car in. That was right on the edge of the track limits. And, well, he's going to come up now to the second sector split time, and we'll see if that throwing of the car has had any effect. It's actually gone slower than his previous lap timer, 2 tenths off, but he will pick up some lovely slipstream from this McLaren in front, who doesn't try to move out the way, actually, I think, tries to assist him. So whichever McLaren that is, I'm sure I'll be saying thank you very much to him as he heads around the final corner now, and we'll see where George Chapman can go. He wasn't great in the first 2 sectors, but a massive slipstream has helped him. Can he gain time? No, he does go purple in the final sector, but Kyle Stewart-Woodard didn't quite help him enough. And that was his lap time, a 19.4 in the end. So it would have been enough for first place anyway. But of course, he sits already on that pole position. I don't think Daniel Riley will get out of the pits in time to set another push lap. But we'll see where the man who could be challenging for the championship will go. He's going to head through the first corner, just trying to go so late on the brakes, because it doesn't matter really how you enter this corner, it matters how you exit, and the sharp turn out of turn number 2 is exactly what Ethan ordered. And now heading through the long sweeping, you want to keep it down full throttle here, no lifting if possible, and then up to the first sector split time. He improves by 0.5 tenths of a second. He needs more time in this lap. Where can he find it? He's not pushing as hard as George Chapman was, which can bring him some benefits, as it means that he will be able to go even longer down the main straights of this circuit, as that is a McLaren pulled off to the side. That will not be an improvement on a lap time for Kyle Stewart-Woodard. Shackleton comes up to the second sector split time. Is this an even further improvement? Only just. He is 600ths up on his lap time, and he's only got a couple corners to go. It was purple in the second sector, so that bodes well for the Ferrari. He now comes up to the final corner. There's not much time for him to gain, and this is where his approach is going to work much better than George Chapman's. George was throwing it into the corners, not getting the exit, but through the corners, gaining so much time. Shackleton, a lot more measured in his attack, and now up to the line. A 19.9. It's third for Ethan Shackleton. It's the last driver on circuit will be Stewart-Woodard, who's getting a lovely slipstream from his brother ahead, Kyle. And now he might even be held up by him in the final corner as Kyle sends himself off the circuit and retires from the session. Around the final corner comes Connor. Is he going to be into the 19s? Has that slipstream effect worked? No, but it has climbed him above Kyle Stewart-Woodard and into P4. This qualifying session is over. It's George Chapman who announces himself once again on pole position. What a lap then from George Chapman to take that pole position, and then another one to solidify it. Daniel Riley didn't come out for his last run, and so sits with a 19.8 in P2. P3 for Ethan Shackleton, and 4th place for Connor Stewart-Woodard, who was helped by his brother to actually climb ahead of his brother and up into P4. Then Kyle in P5, and to round out the field, Brian Moore with still no sign of Lucas Erricini. That is the way that it ends up going. 6 drivers on our field around Monza. The home man not rocking up tonight, and so we should be seeing a scrap between these 6 drivers. As I mentioned it earlier, notable missing Andrea Chenkovan which opens the door so much, and George Chapman taking advantage. Do you reckon he's got enough, though, to take it home? He didn't last week or the week before in Zandvoort, last round in Zandvoort. Do you reckon he's got enough on his hands tonight?
Race at Monza because of that.
By the way, just to let everybody know on the stream, of course, you can see the stream card at the moment. It is horrendously wet in Monza. The blue wall tyres are out, and so this can throw something even bigger into the mix.
Well, that changes everything I literally just said. So obviously I couldn't see that, but so no DRS, pure racing. So we will see, those without traction control are going to struggle. Anyone on 0-0 wings is going to be crying right now.
I would agree, and I would have made that gamble very wrong. Although I would have seen that it did look exactly like this. So I mean, that's probably why those lap times were slower than you thought they were going to be, because they were preparing for this sort of horrendous condition. But well, this certainly throws something into the mixer. And
I still don't think I would go particularly high wings. I still think at Monza you only need, in the wet, potentially 10.5 would be enough. Something like that. You only need a couple of clicks higher, I think, at Monza, just because, as I said, most of it is straights. And as we said, there's only 7 corners. So just that couple of clicks higher, I think, will be enough.
Yeah, 7 real corners, 11 total corners with those flat out, with those ones that you would take flat out. So we will see as we head on to the race who's going to come out on top. I'm going to give you 2 words. You need to name someone. Who are you backing?
Ooh, you've put me on the spot there.
Already more than 2 words.
I'm going to go George Chapman.
There we go, George Chapman. I'll go different then. I'll go for Shackleton. That was 1 word, so that's even, well, it was 1 prediction word, so even less. But Ethan Shackleton, not Ernest, not Jamie. I think it'll be Ethan Shackleton who comes out on top tonight. But we'll have to see as the drivers head into race day. A very, very wet race day at Monza. The Tifosi will have their red brollies out. And, well, I don't think I could have thought of a more British sentence. We're going to go then to the 5 lights for this race after the formation lap, where George Chapman gets off very, very aggressively. Has anybody made a gamble onto Inters in this condition when we can barely see the track? No, they haven't. And what a surprise that is. That was sarcasm, by the way, as George Chapman sets us away. He's just trying to find the grip around this circuit. Those tyres will be absolutely freezing cold. So it's not going to be a very nice condition for them to contend with. But yeah, we've mentioned it. 7 corners around Monza. There's not too many for the drivers to contend with. But how much time, roughly, do you reckon they'll be losing in each and every corner just from doing things like that? Connor Stewart Woodard losing at the rear. Do you reckon it'll just be a race of attrition where it's going to be the driver who keeps it in a straight line, the best comes out on top? Or do you reckon it'll be a bit more open, where it's more open to pace? Maybe George Chapman does blast off into the distance with that pace that he's got, and then spins, and then is still able to take victory. I think there's many different ways you could see this race, but what's your take on it?
I have 3 words to describe how I think this race is going to be won. Keep it on track. As simple as that. In these full wet conditions, it's so hard. You just need to keep it on track, keep a steady pace, and you will find results, because these conditions are so tricky. Everyone's going to be going off. If you can keep it on, you'll gain loads of time just from that. So, of course, we don't know up in the comms box whether or not it's going to get dry. It could potentially. If it gets drier, then we'll potentially move to the Inters. And actually, I have just remembered Monza was wet last season as well, all wet. So it's pretty much a repeat of last season.
Yeah, of course, almost a repeat of last season, but of course with new drivers at the fore, the likes of George Chapman looking to stamp their name.
And you instead of Tom.
Well, yes, exactly, me instead of Tom. But yeah, this might be the first wet APC race I've done it. Anyway, we just watched George Chapman drive into the wall, and both McLarens disqualify themselves. So I think that prepares us for a start, and I think that prepares us for the 5 red lights here in Monza. And the action's underway. Daniel Riley gets off tentatively, cannot pull alongside George Chapman as they head down to the first corner. Shackleton is going to try and be on the outside line. He's even on the grass as he tries to get past Chapman, but he can't quite get through. It's 3 wide for P4 between Moore and the Stuart Woodards, and it's going to be Kyle who comes out on top. Connor still alongside Brian Moore, but on the exit it's going to be Connor who comes out on top in that battle between those two. But it's going to be George Chapman who leads this one away. Daniel Riley holding on to the position ahead of Ethan Shackleton, but the Ferrari will feel as though he's got so much more pace. I think he's prepared for this wet condition much more than anybody else has, and he's itching to get past Daniel Riley now as Carl Stuart Woodard already dropping almost 1 second behind the Ferrari. But Shackleton trying to close in on the kick Sauber just ahead, both sliding through the corners. You can see, though, that Shackleton is going to try and get past very soon. Now they head down towards the Ascari chicane. Is he going to chance to move into their position? I wouldn't even try and make in the dry condition. Not quite yet is the synopsis. We've got 27 laps. No point trying to make ascent into lap number 1. But it looks as though at the moment George Chapman has the measure over the rest of the field. Shackleton has the pace over Daniel Riley. Hasn't quite opened up the opportunity, but as we end the first lap of this race, George Chapman already extended a 2-second gap over Daniel Riley in P2. Shackleton sitting in P3, waiting to get past the kick Sauber as soon as he possibly can. Fastest lap going in with a 36.4 for George Chapman, and Shackleton now heading down the main straight in the slipstream of Daniel Riley. Could he pull out into the first corner? He's going to try. It's going to be a late send, potentially. Not quite. Doesn't feel as though he's got that grip on the inside line, and Shackleton just backs out. Doesn't make it for the time being. Could be looking around the outside, but a squirm on the exit of turn number 2 means that he is not going to try and get ahead. But this is already a battle that's looking like it's going to go on all race long. Shackleton trying to find the wet lines around Daniel Riley as the dry lines already form and become quicker for the kick Sauber. And Shackleton will try and tow his way past on the outside. He gets a better exit out of the chicane and once again gets the run, but not quite close enough to make that move stick. This is where the lower wings come into effect, where you can close right down on the car in front. It's just in the corners where you're going to be at a deficit, but on the straights you're going to be absolutely flying, and Shackleton now is flying as he closes in on Daniel Riley. He's just a tenth behind, but with no DRS or anything of the sort, he can't quite get close enough to make that move stick, almost going into the back there of Daniel Riley and doing well to avoid him. But I think this is where the setup changes come in. Shackleton, I think, has gone for a higher wing setup, which benefits him massively in the corners. But Daniel Riley can blast away through the many straights we have here in Monza. And that is exactly what's helping him defend at the moment. Lap number 3 then is just about to begin. And 3 is exactly the gap that George Chapman has over Daniel Riley, with another fastest lap pumped in. Shackleton lost the rear on the exit Parabolica. Through went Carl Stuart Woodard. He's going to have his go at attacking Daniel Riley, but the kick Sauber's gamble to go on that lower wing setup has worked out so far, and he holds on to that P2. He'll want that P1, of course, but Chapman just so much quicker than anybody else on this field at the moment. And, well, it's going to be Shackleton that's struggling in the corners at the moment, or struggling down the straights is where he mostly has his issues. But, yeah, there we go. It's also, talking of this race, keep an eye on the tyres that these drivers are on and exactly when they're going to come into the pits, because within the first 5 minutes of this race, it is supposed to dry up completely. It is supposed to be completely sunny here around the Autodromo Internazionale di Monza. So that could throw something else into the mixer and mean that George Chapman's gamble to go for a dry setup could pay off as down the inside. Look, Shackleton trying to get back past Stuart Woodard. He is quicker. He just made a mistake on that last lap, and he's demonstrated that by going down the inside of Ascari, a position where I thought he would never be able to make up or replace. I thought he would never be able to make up a position, but he has done just that, and now he tries to bear down on Daniel Riley once again. I say George Chapman's on a dry setup. He now gapped the rest of the field by 5 whole seconds in that Williams. So after retiring last time out, George Chapman is doing something absolutely sensational. If he can stay mistake-free throughout this race, then he will be absolutely flying. But at the moment, he sits 5 seconds ahead of Daniel Riley as these two for P3 continue to fight. It's going to be the outside line for Carl Stewart, who seals that position nice and easily. And, well, Shackleton is just forced to sit in behind in P4. It could be an outside line switch for the Ferrari driver as he closes in once again. But you can see how much that dry line is forming. That rain is getting lighter, and we could be getting those dry conditions very, very soon. These two will continue to fight as they try to close in on Daniel Riley as well. To the inside goes Shackleton, but not quite got enough grip. He doesn't think yet to make a move. When he gets that grip, though, he is absolutely flying. And, well, this is where he wants to take that advantage, because it's quite clear to me, at least, that he's gone for a higher wing setup. However, I may well be wrong. Owen is your fountain of knowledge on this. Do you reckon I'm right? Or do you reckon I could be completely wrong and he's actually just more talented?
Sorry, my audio cut. What did you say?
Well, I'm saying that Shackleton potentially has gone for a higher wing setup, which is benefiting him in these conditions. But when it could be going to the dries, he will not be favoured as much as he is now down the inside of Carl Stewart into the final corner, but doesn't quite have that grip. Do you think he's gone for a high wing setup, or do you think it's just a higher level of skill just to keep hold of that car in these conditions?
I think he's probably got a little bit of a higher wing setup. I think he's probably, from what I've seen, maybe running sort of 8-4, something like that. Because he's not slow on the straights, but he's not flying particularly, I'd say is the best way to put it. So he probably is on a slightly higher wing setup than you ordinarily would run at Monza. So that's what I think on this. Although obviously there's not really any way to know what drivers are running. We'll actually have to ask them after the race, I suppose. We'll ask all of them what setup they were running.
Yeah, it's probably the most intriguing debate that we could possibly have about this race so far, is what setup are they going on? Exactly what is their approach to this race? As the gap between Shackleton and Daniel Riley ever increases, and that Kick Sauber looks as though he's all but sealed that P2 in these conditions at the moment, but they do look like they're getting lighter, and it does look as though we will be going to at least intermediate conditions very soon, and that gamble could be made onto the intermediate tyres as soon as the next few laps, at least, because it does look much, much lighter, and the drivers are looking much more in control of their car. Do you reckon they're going to chance a move to the inters with that, with those dry conditions looming, or do you reckon they're just going to keep going out and scrapping it out as it is at the moment on the wets and switch straight to the dries?
I think it depends, because you said it was supposed to fully dry up in the first 5 minutes. If it was supposed to dry up in the first 5 minutes of the race, I would have charged on inters. I would have taken a gamble. Just, if you can tough out those first couple of laps, whether or not it's full wets out there, I don't know. Realistically, in this situation, whether I'd gamble on inters or not would depend on the feeling out there, if you know what I mean. I'm very much somebody that does my strategy on the fly, especially when it comes to wet races. So if I was out there, if I felt like I could do it, I would potentially chance some inters, or maybe have even started on them, depending on how quickly it was going to dry up. But we will see. I think someone will snap and go to some inters, because it definitely will be quicker quite soon. So we will see.
I mean, it's a very interesting debate to have, really, especially with this game this year. Not quite necessarily being the most realistic, if we're being very nice and generous about it, because I have seen a lot of esports drivers, at least, going for a set of inters even in the wet conditions, because even if it is going to be wet for the whole race, a dry line does form, and that dry line just appears to be so much more dramatic and more pronounced this year than any other. And so I think it was worth a gamble. It's still worth a gamble if they want to come into the pits. So I think it's going to be up to the individual drivers. I think we could be seeing somebody who doesn't necessarily feel as though he belongs where he is at the moment. Someone like Shackleton, who will feel as though he's faster, and he is faster. He's gone fastest, in fact, with a 32.9 as the track conditions dry up. But somebody like a Shackleton who feels as though he's out of sync where he should be and where he normally is as well, I think they could be trying to make that gamble within the next few laps. And, well, that's something that's going to be revealed within time. But Shackleton is now making his way up to where he would have felt he belonged, as he's now back in within 1 second of Daniel Riley ahead in P2. And he's really closing in now. He's closed, or he's built that gap between himself and Kyle, and he's now closed in on Daniel. So it's a perfect opportunity for the Ferrari to try and really kick on in this race. 7.6 seconds between Daniel and George up ahead, though. I think it's unlikely that he'll be taking the race victory, save for any surprises and safety cars and all these sorts of things that could drag the field in. And, of course, those sorts of things are still possible as Shackleton now goes down the inside line. Could be taking this position into Ascari. We've seen it work before for him, and we could be seeing it work again. Yes, we are. And Shackleton demonstrating the pace. So he has just taken it up a notch as he's now gone onto the, or he's now getting ready and used to these drier conditions. Of course, not dry yet, but he's just getting used to these drier conditions. And he's absolutely flying at the moment. Fastest lap going to George Chapman as the track definitely dries up. That's 7/10 quicker than Shackleton's previous lap. What can the Ferrari do as he comes up to the line? It's not the fastest lap of the race, but it's not too far off as well, I would imagine, as he just flies and gets closer and closer. He is, though, 6/10 slower on that previous lap than George Chapman, but closer in terms of getting away from Daniel Riley and closer to taking those 18 points home for second place. And everybody else pretty solidified in their positions at the moment as, well, the closest to closing in is Connor, who looks as though he might be on his brother's back within the next few laps, but at the moment they just sit in 4th and 5th, 1.9 seconds apart. Shackleton has now broken the DRS range to Daniel Riley, and the reason I talk about the DRS range when we're in the full wet conditions is, one, it will come into play later, and two, it's a good marker to demonstrate how close these drivers actually are in reality together. But it's one of those things that you can only really measure by watching races, knowing how these drivers in these cars act. And it's one of those things where they've dropped out of that slipstream, so they're going to be massively negatively affected, is Daniel Riley. But he showed the pace to hold on to that P2 earlier on ahead of Shackleton. So we know he has the pace, at least, to keep up with everybody at the top of the field. 8 laps gone in this race then, and many a lap still to go, and a lot of intrigue around this one. Of course, no Andrea Chenkovan, as I previously touched on, in this race, which should throw up a great opportunity for some of these drivers to pick up points. And George Chapman, no points at all so far this season, looking to try and change that. Of course, made his debut in the Netherlands where he DNF'd, but today he's looking for no such issues and looking just to take an easy victory, as we're now a third of the way through this race, and he, I think it's fair to say, has absolutely dominated this one. What's your take on George Chapman's insane performance?
Absolutely unbreakable so far. You know, but after Netherlands, as he said, DNFing, this is a statement, you know. You're heading on to next season. This is a statement. I can fight for the championship. I can compete with Andreas Senkovan, you know. So it's almost a like-for-like replacement, I suppose, for Aaron McGurk, as this is somebody whose pace is absolutely electric at the moment. So we will see what he can do for the rest of the season and into next season when we head on to F1 25.
I'd argue, to be honest, that in the early days, in the infancy of his APC career, he's actually been faster than McGurk ever was. McGurk's biggest strength, I think, was his ability to just hold it up at each of the circuits, whereas George Chapman isn't necessarily as good at that, or at least from what little we've seen of him so far. I think his strength is pace at individual circuits as opposed to multiple. And, well, he comes into the pits now. We'll see what the Williams goes on to, but he's gone for a gamble of some sorts, and he might be switching here
I think it'll be
to the
Inters.
intermediates, as Daniel Riley comes in as well. And Well, the kick Sauber a 10-second penalty for speeding in the pit lane, but it is going to be intermediates for George Chapman, and I'm sure for Daniel Riley as well as they come out of the pits on that gamble. And yes, it is inters for Daniel Riley. This could throw a huge spanner in the works of anybody's race, because now, of course, he drops almost to the rear of the field behind Brian Moore, and he would be at the back of the field if not for Daniel Riley coming into the pits as well. So a huge gamble. We'll see how it pays off. Watch the pace of this Williams against the kick Sauber of Brian Moore as they head down the next sector, and you can tell already the pace advantage that he has. But is it a pace advantage that is going to be worth about 20 seconds? I ask you this every week, like I don't know the answer, and through goes George Chapman after a hairy moment there with Brian Moore, just trying to get past the kick Sauber. He's done so eventually, but looked a little bit scary and on edge for a second. What is the pit offset? How long are they going to be spending in this Monza pit lane? It's not the longest in the world, but it's also not necessarily the shortest.
I think it's almost 20 seconds bang on. I think it's about 19.8 or something. Don't quote me on it. I'll find out an exact number.
But yeah, there we go. Fastest lap of the race coming in from Shackleton as Kyle Stewart Woodard also makes that leap into the pits to switch onto a set of the inters. We'll see what the pace difference is between George Chapman and Shackleton. So Shackleton, of course, we saw a 32. But of course, I was about to look, but the sector times would have been the only representative. We'll see what he's able to do on that next lap, but he is certainly a lot quicker. Is he 20 seconds quicker, though, over the next few laps as this track dries up and we go to completely dry conditions, I'm sure, within the next few? I think Brian and Kyle have sort of missed a trick with coming into the pits when they did. I think coming in earlier was the right strategy, but of course, it's better late than never, and they come into the pits. The only way it would be better never than late is if they came in when it was completely bone dry and they came in for inters. That would be a little bit too late. But with these drivers now having to think about those gambles and having to do it on the fly, as you mentioned, it is going to be a very interesting tactical battle between these drivers. Of course, George Chapman came in on that last lap for a set of the intermediate tyres. I'd say he's offset about 7 seconds so far, showing how quick those inters are, especially in these conditions. And I'm sure they're only going to get faster. But in comes Shackleton into the pit lane. 32 was the fastest that Shackleton went. Chapman is absolutely flying here. He's going to come up to the line. Is it going to be fastest lap of the race so far? As in comes Connor as well. It is. It's a 29. 3 seconds quicker. So that is a lot of time that he's gained. And with everybody coming in now, it's sort of been negated, the offset that he would have had in the pit lane. So I thought that somebody was going to make that gamble. Someone like Connor, who is looking for a better result potentially than he would be expecting. It's going to be very interesting for these drivers now, as that offset that he would have had and that advantage that he would have had has been nullified, or that potential disadvantage has been nullified even, and that advantage has been strengthened. He's now 12.5 seconds ahead at the top of the field, and Shackleton now much closer to Daniel Riley than he ever would have been before, because of course Daniel Riley came in when Chapman did as well, whereas Shackleton left it just a couple more laps and potentially a couple too many laps. They now wait with bated breath for the dry conditions to come and hope that their strategy that they're going to go on is the correct one, and they come in at the right time for the right tyres. That will really be what decides this race, although I think with the fact that George Chapman has nailed that attempt to come into the pits so far, then I think he is out on top by a decent margin. And, well, I believe you've got information here on how long the pit lane really is.
Yeah, pit lane is about 22.9 seconds, so nearest 23 seconds than 22. A little bit longer than I thought it was. I thought it was a little bit of a shorter pit lane, but no, 23 seconds in the wet. So it's not the longest, but it's not the shortest in the world. I believe the shortest is Mexico, I want to say that's quite a short pit lane. That's like 19 seconds or something. So
Monaco's up
yeah,
there.
it's a longer pit lane.
Would it be Monaco?
Monaco's quite short as well. Yeah,
I've been there. I've walked up and
potentially.
down it. Fun fact of
Have
the
you?
day. I have indeed. That was fun. They leave like all the
Spa
barriers
is a
out.
very short pit lane as well.
What was?
Spa is a very short pit lane.
Yes, they shortened that for F1. Found this out recently. They shorten it for F1. For WEC, they go all the way up Eau Rouge and Raidillon. So the more you know.
Yes, they do. Yeah.
I think that would certainly bring something to an F1 race. I don't know why they don't implement it, but with the way Mohammed Ben Salam is at the moment, I won't get into that. Anyway, lap 13 of this APC race, which is far off the Formula One that I'm mentioning at the moment, and 11.9 seconds the gap between the driver at the top and the driver in P2 as Jedi, aka Brian Moore, picks up the second penalty of this race. The first one went to Daniel Riley with a 10-second for speeding in the pit lane. Fastest lap then once again for Chapman with he's just demonstrating his pace. He's showing off to the rest of this field. This is what I could have done in Zandvoort. Now I'm just deciding to do it here, where I have the opportunity just to really fly away and not have any pressure on him in any way, shape or form. He's really taking this race into his own hands, and well, he's going to have to do that one more time as the rain is stopping. You can tell the amount of raindrops is falling and falling, and within the next few laps, I think we'll be getting our first drivers in for dry compound tyres. Whether it's a gamble, whether it's the real strategy that they should be going on, we'll have to wait and see, of course, as is always the case. But George Chapman at the moment, he's nailed that switch onto the intermediates. Potentially took a gamble as to whether everybody else was going to go onto the inters, but in the end it was a gamble that paid off. And he's going to try and do exactly the same thing once again. And, well, I mean, I talk about drying conditions. Of course, I'm not the fountain of knowledge. This is the second time this race I've referred to you as the fountain of knowledge. So please, grant us your wisdom on drying conditions on this wonderful, wonderful game, F1 24, that I can't wait to be rid of in about a month's time.
I was literally about to say that. I was going to say I wouldn't consider this a wonderful, wonderful game. And what I'm about to say is going to be a moan about this game. I spoke about this last season as well. You know, I've been very vocal in all streams about my disliking of F1 24 and its physics. But one of the big things that really annoys me about it, in drying conditions, when it's going from inters to full dry, when the rain stops, for some reason, there's a visual glitch where it just gets completely dry immediately. And it's not actually dry. It's just showing as dry. It's really, really weird. And many drivers fall foul to a stupid visual glitch that EA have had nearly a year to fix and still haven't. So, yeah, many races have been ruined by it. And the only way to avoid it is to go in when the engineer tells you, or when DRS is enabled. In my opinion, when DRS gets enabled is the time to go in this game, because there is no reliable way of knowing when it's going to be fully dry in this game.
Well, as an EA-affiliated creator, I'd just like to say that Owen's opinions do not reflect my own, even if they are objectively correct. And, well, we'll see. We'll see
Here's
if that...
to F1 25, eh?
Oh, let's hope so. Let's hope it's going to be great as another fastest lap there.
I have
George
played
Chapman.
I have played the beta of F1 25, and I would say it is very much a happy middle ground between 23 and 24. It's got the sharp nose of 24, but it has the handling and controllability of 23. I actually played the beta, and I actually had fun playing an F1 game. The first time in a very long time.
First time in about 5 years.
Yeah, if 23 was a really good game, 22 was, well, arguably worse than 24. 21 was really good, and 20 was really good as well. But 23 for me was like the perfect game for this spec of cars. But I feel like 25 is going to be a good game as well. From what I've played, it's very much, as I said, a happy middle ground. So hopefully they don't go and mess it up like they did in 24. They changed the handling physics in an update in like July and just completely ruined the game.
Well, you know why? You know why we're getting a good game next year, though, and you know why I know that for a fact, because all of the updates they have are bi-yearly. So the developers are bi-yearly. So those who worked on 22 worked on 24. Those who worked on 23 are working on 25. So if they fancy sacking off a whole development team, then I know which one I'd rather they got rid of. But
100%.
yes, it's one of the flaws with working as a small team, and EA could have expanded it. They haven't, but they could have expanded it, and it just feels like a wasted opportunity. And 25 and 26 have to be absolutely nailed, otherwise they may well be losing all of their fan base and potentially the licenses as well heading into 2027. So they have to absolutely get this one right. And if their new regulation change games have any bearing and any say on what they're going to do, then 2014 and 2022, everybody. So they'll be losing the rights after 2026. But that's the pessimist in me, saying that, of course, they're going to mess up the handling in July like they did last time. But as I say, that's the pessimist.
Yeah, well, the sales also say the exact same thing. You know, in 2020, arguably due to lockdown as well, they sold like 1.4 million copies. And in this game, they didn't even sell 140k copies of F1 24, which is that's ridiculous to have that much of a downfall in such a short amount of time, especially for a video game. You know, F1 is such a big thing. So how do you completely ruin the games of like one of the biggest motorsports, probably the biggest motorsport in the world? And how can only 140,000 people be buying it when F1 is watched by probably 100 million people around the world? It just doesn't make sense.
Especially if you look at the way the league racing community was in 21 and 22, was great.
Oh, it was massive.
You know what else is massive?
It was huge. Oh no, don't start that.
I couldn't help it. It was a trend of my commentary a few months ago where I would just try and fit it in as much as I possibly could, and I got about 7 references in the
Yeah, I did that at one point as well. I got the words low, taper, and fade consecutively into a commentary. You know, just a little bit of wordplay in commentary is always good fun.
I might bring up the clip if we get really bored at some point this season of it, or potentially towards the end of a race or in an intermission, something like that. I'll have to bring it up in an interview just to have an excuse to do it. But yeah, it was a great time. It was a great time where I was trying to fit these sorts of things in. And arguably I'd be better at it now, I think. Just trying to squeeze words like that into commentary. And there's not been anything as fun as the low taper fade ever since. But means that my broadcasts have of course become more professional, as you know, the consummate professional I always am, rocking up on time, doing everything as it should be. And well, to be fair, I've gotten into it. We've gotten into it here at APC. These sorts of broadcasts. In comes George Chapman from a set of the Inters, by the way, bringing it straight back to the action and off for talking about me once again, as I always end up with doing these broadcasts. In comes George Chapman into the pits. Is this going to be a set of dries? No, it's another set of Inters. So, well, interesting, cool. Clearly he thinks they're going to last till the end of the race. It's going to be very, very interesting as to whether they will, and I will be watching with a very close eye everybody else who comes into the pits. And I don't think if anybody pits now, it will be onto a set of the dries. As that is Daniel Riley into the pits. What's he doing? Is it going to be dries? It's going to be another set of Inters. So, well, we are doing a whole rest of the race on Inters. So completely the opposite of what the MFD and Jeff said that they were going to do. And it's going to be Inters to the end of the race. Jeff said it would be dry straight away. No worries about anything. Just start on the wet. See how you feel. See where we go. Here we are, 19 laps in. Completely still a wet session. Of course, not as wet as it was when we started. But the intermediate tyres and still rain falling on the circuit. So either a weather person issue or a Jeff issue once again. Or Mark even. I keep forgetting it's Mark now. Shows how much I actually play this game driving. But yes, out of the pits comes the driver who was sitting in first. He is now sitting in second place, just behind, 14.3 seconds behind. But just behind in terms of if Shackleton wants to come in once again, he's going to be about 6 seconds ahead. So the perfect opportunity then for him to try to break free. And this is the perfect opportunity for him to push. I think he will be trying to gamble to the end of the race. I think that will be the right thing to do from his perspective, knowing that gap is huge. And, if they're on the same set of tyres and George Chapman drags in 2 seconds a lap, fair play. I think there's not really much you can do to argue about that. But, this should be a very interesting end to the race, and we'll see. If Shackleton stays out, I think he's going to be in strong contention for winning this race. If he comes in, then I think he's going to struggle. But of course, as I've just mentioned, I don't do much playing on this game. I do more commentary. So give me your take, Owen.
I think it's 50-50. I think if it dries, say lap 24, 25, then I've forgotten his name. George Chapman. He will win it. George Chapman will win it if it dries, just because old Inters versus new Inters in those conditions is going to be no competition. In drying conditions, he's just going to be that much faster. But if it stays as is, a little bit of light rain, then potentially we might have a race on our hands for the win. We will see, but it will depend on how worn Shackleton's tyres are, because those early pit stops from Daniel Riley and George Chapman made me think that tyre wear on Inters was fairly high, because ordinarily you'd expect them to go to the end of the race on that one set of Inters, but that's not the case. That makes me wonder if tyre wear is very, very high, especially for those that came in earlier, because Daniel Riley and George Chapman were the first two to box, if I remember correctly. So maybe they boxed a little bit too early before it was wet enough for the Inters and burnt their tyres out on those first couple of laps.
Yeah, they came in 2 laps earlier than everybody else in contention at the top, and that's. I think potentially they've burnt those tyres out, but they might also be at risk at burning the tyres out again if they stay out. Those being the likes of Shackleton, because it is getting drier, and I think it will continue to get dry for the remainder of the race. There is a 3-second time penalty heading George Chapman's way. That could have a huge implication on the way this race ends up if Shackleton decides to stay out. Shackleton, 10-second penalty for speeding in the pit lane. So that tells me 2 things. 1, Shackleton's come into the pits. 2, he's now going to have a 7-second deficit on George Chapman's time. That is going to be absolutely huge, added to the amount of time that he's lost there. So I think he's made the wrong decision to come into the pits, in fact. And he's certainly made the wrong decision to come in and speed into the pit lane, as now he's not going to have that pace to go to the end of the race, or he's going to try and get that pace. But with the advantage that Chapman has had, I think it was worth a gamble for Shackleton, who's been easily P2 all race long, just to try and see if he can stay out on those tyres. You can see as well that even though he's come out of the pits, he is 2 pit stops ahead of Kyle Stewart-Woodard in 3rd place. So a missed opportunity, in my opinion, for Ethan Shackleton to have stayed out, and he's just received a double blow, as now he comes out 14 seconds behind with a 10-second time penalty to boot. So a huge moment in this race that almost confirms it for Chapman if he's able to hold on.
Yeah, in terms of what you said about Shackleton staying out, I don't agree. All these pit stops have made me think that tyre wear is really, really high, as I said, because ordinarily you'd as I said, you'd stay on that one set to the end. So maybe tyre wear on Inters is just stupidly high. There are certain circuits around on F124 where tyre wear on Inters is just killer. So I'm not too sure. We'll have to ask after the race, but that's my theory.
I think it was worth a gamble, though. That was the point I was trying to get across. I completely agree about the about the tyre wear, and it must be so high, but it was worth the gamble for the driver that's now 14, or was 14 seconds off of George Chapman at the top. And it was just because he's been off all race long. He hasn't been up to the pace of the Williams. And I think it was just worth a gamble to see if he could stay out. The rain appears to have stagnated a little bit. So I think we could be doing this whole race in inter conditions. But yeah, I mean, in either case, we've thought about different strategies here. But the one strategy he wouldn't have wanted to do is coming in for a 10-second time penalty. That is the opposite of what he would have wanted heading into the pit lane on that occasion. And, well, that is going to be absolutely costly for his race and potentially his championship challenge as well, as now he's going to not quite, even if he gets past Chapman, I don't think he's going to be able to build up that 7-second gap necessary to hold on to that position. So unless he can get that penalty removed, which I don't see very often with pit lane penalties, unless he can get that penalty removed, I think he's just going to be in P2. He is, though, closing 1.5 seconds on that previous lap. So the tyre wear, or the tyre advantage at the start of a new stint appears to be very high, as we saw before Chapman pumping in fastest laps. Now it's Shackleton's turn to have a go at being the quickest around this Monza circuit, and he's doing just that. I think he might be taking the fastest lap of this race. He comes up to the line 9.7, 9.8 seconds behind, 26.2. So that is the fastest lap of the race by a decent margin, I believe. And the Ferrari now trying to close in, trying to show the pace that we know that he has to hold on to that race lead. But the battle at the top is spicing up, just as the battle for P4 is spicing up. We've got the driver in P4, Connor Stewart-Woodard, on an older set of the Inters, and Daniel Riley on what are now slightly worn. They were a brand new set at the start of this stint, and the kick Sauber could be getting through as early as turn number 1. It's going to be a much easier grip for him, I'd say, as they head down the straight now, and he may not even have any competition as he takes that position into turn 1. Could have been a little bit of a tap there, actually, from Connor Stewart-Woodard, as he tried to maybe not outbrake himself. He was able to stay out of the rear wing of Daniel Riley. But he holds on to P5 now and tries to stay in that DRS range of the car ahead, potentially looking to the inside line even as they head into these corners. It's just about feels as though he's squeezed out, does not make that move stick, and sits in behind once again. P5 is what he's going to hold on to, but he feels racy against Daniel Riley, and he's going to try as hard as he possibly can to race this kick Sauber, because he hasn't had much on-track action, and with only a few laps left to go in this race and equal amounts of penalties, absolutely why not race with the kick Sauber as they head into the Ascari chicane. Daniel Riley holds on to P4. It is going to be Connor Stewart-Woodard who tries to close right in and down the back straight. He's going to try and stay within that slipstream for as long as he can, and maybe pull out, maybe not, as he sits in behind. By the way, Shackleton up ahead. That benefit has been nullified. So that pace advantage on the new Inters was so extreme, but now it has well and truly dropped off. They head now onto lap number 25 with Daniel Riley trying to hold on ahead of Connor Stewart-Woodard, and he's going to do so one more time. And, well, I think that is how those two are going to run now, with Daniel Riley just about too quick for the McLaren behind. Shackleton 6 seconds behind George Chapman now, and that gap is closing. That race is on, but I don't think those tyres are going to last long enough to make this a battle worthy of a champion. And well, with that 10-second penalty looming as well, I think he's either going to try and fight this one for glory, or he's not quite going to get close enough. He is, though, much quicker in that final sector. So this is where the setups come into it. And for Ethan Shackleton, it's a good opportunity to try and demonstrate, maybe if not getting that overall race win, it's a good opportunity to demonstrate that pace that we know he has. As well, I said that was probably going to be the order they finished in. Connor Stewart-Woodard making his way past Daniel Riley up into P4, and Daniel's going to have to go all over again in terms of retaking this position and holding on to P4 as now they head into the penultimate lap of this race, and it's going to be Daniel Riley chasing for the first time in a while. He was able to hold on to that position ahead of Connor over the last few laps, but he's now been reeled back in that slipstream was enough for them to start fighting once again. They head down the straight with Daniel Riley right in the thick of it and pulling to the inside line now of turn number 1. Will take that position before even the corner. And that is Daniel Riley back up into P4. Shackleton now 3 seconds behind. It is getting ever so close between the top 2 as to whether they are going to fight on track for this race lead and this race on track victory at the very least. So maybe Shackleton feels as though he can get that penalty removed. These two will continue to fight. It's the inside line for Connor Stewart-Woodard as they head into the chicane. But it becomes the outside, a little bit of a tap between himself and Daniel Riley. In the end, no damage done, but it's going to be Daniel Riley who loses out and loses quite a chunk of time as well as, George Chapman comes around the final corner to start his final lap. You can see how close Shackleton is to the back of the Williams, and he's going to try and close in 1.7 seconds back now as they head down the main straight for the final time in this race. Williams versus Ferrari, a tale as old as time, about 50 years have these teams been scrapping along, and we've got one more scrap here in APC with George Chapman leading Shackleton. Shackleton with a 10-second penalty and, Chapman with just 3. However, they could both get those penalties removed, so they're going to try and duke it out to the death. But in that first sector, it's much quicker for George Chapman, and that may well have sealed him the race. It was 1.6 seconds as they headed around the final corner. It went up all the way to 2.1 as they headed through the first one, but it's now down as close as ever. 1.5 between Chapman and Shackleton as they head into the second sector, and out of the second sector, the gap is shrunk ever further to 1.1. So this race is almost certainly not done on track yet. And I think there may well be a move from Shackleton if he can get close enough around the final corner, much quicker through the Ascari chicane, 5/10 in fact, and he closes in with that slipstream effect now. It's so powerful, and he's going to try and close in down into the final corner. He comes just 4/10 back now. It's going to be a drag race to the line between the Williams and the Ferrari. A poor final corner then for the Williams. Sees Shackleton head through. He will take the on-track victory in this race. It will be Chapman who takes the off-track victory with both of those penalties applied. And it's going to be potentially a race victory for Shackleton if he can get that penalty removed. Third place for Kyle Stewart-Woodard, who's 32 seconds off. He has had the easiest race of his life just to sit there in that third place. He had a little bit of scrapping with Daniel Riley earlier on, but a strategy switch that did not pay off for the Kickstabber, who's now retired from the session. He's crashed in Ascari. So this final lap here in APC has been oh so dramatic, and Daniel Riley now retiring from this session and will not finish P5. Instead, it will be Brian Moore who takes that P5 away with the Stewart-Woodard brothers in 3rd and 4th. But race victory to either Shackleton or George Chapman. But I think it's fair to say we can confirm it for Chapman now. What a final lap that was. And, a mistake out of the final corner allowed Shackleton to go through and take a race victory that I said was not possible a few laps before. Owen, you backed him, and you were absolutely right to.
Yeah, in the end, that penalty for Ethan Shackleton proving to be his downfall. But take nothing away from George Chapman. You know, he controlled the race from start to finish pretty much. And it was only that late, great pace from Ethan Shackleton that saw him not take that on-track win. Of course, unfortunate for Ethan Shackleton that he wasn't able to win that race. And we'll see if he can get that penalty removed, although I assume it probably won't be. You don't see many pit lane penalties getting removed.
No, but we have seen glitches before where the pit lane delta is a bit screwed. So, all I can say is F125.
Yeah,
F125 is, 38 days away? So, not long to go then before we're able to celebrate a brand new game and a brand new era. But we are here on F124, and we have had a very, very good race on our hands that went right down to the wire, right down to Parabolica, and the win was taken in the end by George Chapman, with Ethan Shackleton taking that on-track victory and looking to potentially get rid of that pit lane delta. We will go to our interviews now. We'll start with the man who ended up, after penalties, sitting in P number 5. Or not penalties even, after a crash from Daniel Riley. So P5, not potentially potentially not what you were expecting, Brian. But talk me through your race.
I don't really know what there is to say about the race, if I'm being honest. It was not there for me today.
What do you think wasn't quite there for you today? What do you think not necessarily went wrong, but along those lines?
In qualifying, I looked at the weather forecast and I thought it was going to dry up early on. I set up,
well,
which did not pay off.
Yeah, well, I mean, we thought that as well, because it did say that it was going to be dry, which not sure what happened to that, but it didn't end up being dry. We did a lot of discussion about this because we had split opinions on it. What sort of wings were you going for? Of course, you were on a dry setup, but what sort of wings did you end up plumping for?
I went very low, and I went 4-1.
4-1. Okay, well that's lower than Owen said would be comfortable. I will say that. he said about.
I was just
10-5.
trying to get the straight line speed.
Yeah,
I was trying to get the
10-5
straight.
yeah.
Yeah, I was trying to get the straight line speed, especially on the McLarens, but just didn't work out.
But in the end, happy with P5. I mean, you ran in P6 most of that race, Daniel. Not necessarily the happiest, I'd imagine, with that last lap, but P5, pretty happy?
I'm happy enough with P5 after the race I had, yeah.
Fair enough. Well, Owen, have you got any questions?
No, nothing from me. Actually, no, I've got one. I've got one, actually. We were having another debate about this. What was tyre wear like? Because I was thinking, considering most people pitted, it was quite high.
For me, my front tires were fine, but my rear tires were just lighting. I could not keep the rear tires in a nice heat window. They were just constant overheating, and I wanted to just do the one stop. I only take the one set of intermediates to the end. But in the end, I had to make the 2-stop because the rear left was on about 70% with about 10 laps to go.
What do you know? Owen was right, I was wrong. Again, I've talked about it before, a tale as old as time. But thank you very much, Brian, for joining us for the interview today. And, well, we'll see you again next week, hopefully, if you remember the races.
Hopefully. Yep.
There we go, then. From the 5th place man, Brian, to the 6th, we're going to go backwards and to the driver that looked as though he would have solidified. Sorry, we've interrupted your conversation there, but looked as though he was going to solidify P5. And then what happened on the last lap there?
I don't even know. I don't even know how I dropped it. Yeah, it's just a frustrating race altogether. We had literally such a mega quali. I did not expect to be P2. I was expecting maybe P4, but we had a mega quali, and as soon as I saw the wet, it was going to be a wet race. I was not looking forward to it, but the start was great because I think Shackleton dropped it somewhere, so I was in P2, and all of a sudden he just, got past me like effortlessly. I mean, it was all about staying on the island at that point, which I was trying to do, which I did really well, to be fair. And then I don't even know what happened. Pit stop, 10-second time penalty. Like, I tried to stop the car, it wouldn't stop. And then as soon as I got that penalty, I feel like I just lost all concentration. Confidence, to be fair, and it just all slowly crumbled like that. But it was just an unfortunate race altogether, unfortunately. So there
was something that was particularly prevalent, I think, with you and the other drivers that came in quite early, was tyre wear. Did that seem to be an issue for you? Did you want to do that second stop, or did you feel forced into it?
No, honestly, I was like, how am I going to go to the end of these tyres? But I saw George, he pitted, so I was like, I need to pit as well. Yeah, it was just an unfortunate race. I was planning to go soft at the end, but it only started drying up on the last lap, so that was what I was gonna do. But yeah, it was just unfortunate about tires, but yeah, just really unfortunate race to be fair.
Yeah, it's one of those, I guess. Was it because I know that the MFD was a little bit deceptive in saying that it was going to rain a little bit at the start and then be dry at the end. Was that reflected in your setup choice? Did you go for something a little bit potentially wetter, or did you just go flat out dry? And well, what were the wings like? Essentially, is the main crux of the question.
No, I think my setups that I use for every single race are all like dry focused. So I think that's why I'm so bad in the wets. But yeah, it's just like even with a wet setup, I feel like I would still do these sort of performances, but we'll have to see. It'll definitely be something to look at. Obviously, I want to check what the next race is. If it's Singapore, I believe it is. Yeah, it is Singapore. Which so it could be a wet race. Texas could be a wet race. Brazil could be a wet race. All these races could be wet races. So I think there's definitely something I need to look at. Maybe changing my setups, maybe. But yeah.
Fair enough then, and well, I'll let you go. Owen, have you got any questions before we let Dan get on with it?
No, you covered everything there.
Wonderful. Well, thank you for joining us. I know it wasn't the greatest race this evening, but wasn't. I'd argue it wasn't too bad. You've ended up in P6, 8 points. So they all count at the end.
Yeah, I mean decent points, but I feel like I need to be scoring because I'm trying to get P3. That's my goal in the second half of the season. So I need to be finishing ahead of Kyle in every single race. So I mean I still got points, but I do need to be finishing ahead of Kyle. So we'll see what happens in Singapore. But I do need some mega points at least one race for the season. So hopefully we do get that at the end.
Yeah, fair enough. Well, we thought this was going to be a race, but not to be. Thank you for joining us tonight. And well, on that note, should we bring in the title rival then, or allegedly the title rival, according to Daniel? We've just heard from Dan, who says he's looking to scrap with you for the championship positions. Pretty good race for you in terms of in that context, all things considered. But how about everything else? Talk to me about that race in general.
Let me tell you, Joseph, I'm very pleased with how that one went. Very pleased. Obviously, Dan, he's the person near me in the championship. He's the one that I'm trying to stay ahead of. So couldn't have asked for more really from that. But quali, I messed up my fast lap, literally invalidated in turn one. I had pace to get ahead of Ethan Shackleton today. Again, same as last race. Like I said, that every race and invalidate. But then obviously the race started pretty well to an extent. Obviously it was a bit wet. Everyone was a bit taken back by it. Got ahead of Ethan when he made a little mistake. He did fight me into some very strange corners. Like I was a bit surprised where he was diving because it was just slowing us both up to Dan. But to be fair, in the wet, Dan was faster than me. He had really good pace. I feel like he set up at a bit more downforce than me because he was pretty quick in the corners. But then, switching to the inters, I think it was Dan's 10-second penalty realistically that done that for me because I was catching him in the intermediate conditions. I don't know if you noticed, I was eking out that time, but I'm not sure if I'd have caught him towards the end. So that 10-second penalty really helped me out there and kept me ahead of him. I'm not really sure what happened at the end. Obviously, I know he was fighting with my brother, which was quite fun to hear because the more points I can gain on him, the better. But yeah, you know what? Very happy with that. Obviously, the podium. Obviously, Chenki's not here. Probably would have been a P4 if he was. But yeah, I feel like I got the maximum I could have out that race. I mean, Ethan, I might have been faster than him at the beginning, but as soon as he had cleared me and he got used to the conditions, he was long gone. So the only thing that could have been better was the fastest lap, which I could have got, I think, on that final lap if I didn't almost spin it in Atari and almost did a damn Riley. So quite happy I didn't.
Yeah, I mean he was devastated. I think is the correct word to put it about about the incident in Ascari. We did speak to him, and you've just touched on as well setups. You said that he may have had a higher downforce setup. He's just told us that he was actually using his dry setup. So it's one of those things that is very interesting. Different sort of approaches to this race. What sort of, because I know that it came up with it was going to be wet then dry. What sort of setup did you go on in terms of the whole race itself? Did you even look at the MFD and see that it was wet before you went into it?
I did actually. I don't know if I did send it to you guys. I don't know if you'd actually picked up on it, but I did check it. I did see it was going to be wet, but I decided to stay fully dry. Mostly because the Monza setups, and I'm sure Owen will probably agree, the Monza setups are quite stable anyway, because they're very low downforce, but you need a bit of stability in those high speed corners, so they are relatively stable. So I stayed dry. I feel like, yes, Dan Riley probably did stay dry, but whether his dry setup is as low downforce as mine, I'm not too sure. But he had good pace in the corners, much better pace in the corners. But I don't know if you've watched that that crash back. It's the most slow motion crash I've ever seen, and I'm looking forward to catch up with Dan in the waiting room after this, because it was so such slow speed. I'm surprised it actually ended with a wheel off. It was quite something to behold.
Who, Dan Riley? We didn't actually get to see that on
Yeah,
the broadcast. We were watching with
yeah. I watched
the
it back
battle at the
after
top.
when I finished. I watched back his stream, and I was like, oh, like that's surprising that it ended, like with his wheel off. It was very slow speed, but unfortunately, that's the way it is sometimes. I've been there as well. We've all been there.
Yeah, well, I will try and pull that up for the stream in a couple of minutes' time, because I won't lie, I've completely forgot that Dan streamed this one. But yeah, I mean, Owen, have you got anything before we let Carl go and bring your brother in?
No, nothing from me. Covered it there.
Wonderful.
Oh, thank you, Owen.
Well, we
Thanks,
will
Joseph.
have then. You're very welcome. We will have then your brother coming in and coming in for an interview. So the other Stuart Woodard coming in here today. Don't know if you were looking in there for an interview or a chat, but you've gotten both regardless. Just talk to me about that race, how it went, and well, that last minute incident with Dan Riley that we're about to catch the stream up on.
Yeah, no. Well, first of all, I was doing both. I wanted to make sure I didn't mess up Dan Riley too much. And I think I might as well have a chat with you guys whilst I'm here. But yeah, overall, it was a bit of a steady race for me. I don't think I was quick. I don't think I was slow. I think I purely had survival on the mind. I don't know what some people were running setup wise, but I feel like mine was super unstable. And I definitely improved my skills of drifting this race.
Yeah, it certainly did seem unstable. Did you go for, as everybody else seemed to, did you fall for the trick that appeared to be the almost fully wet, almost fully dry race even, and you actually went for a dry setup?
Well, I was talking to my brother beforehand. We realised it was going to be a fully wet race, but then we said, you might as well take the gamble. I think I spent so much time. I spent a lot longer today practicing my setup and sorting out my setup. And then coming into it, I saw it was wet, and I said, "Listen, I don't have enough time to try and figure out a new setup." So I said, "I'm going to send it full dry and hope that I can make up the difference in the straights."
What wings did you end up going for then? Because we've had a mix of wings in the discussion today.
Yeah, I was 9-0, 9 front 0 rear. So
that's our first 0. I knew we'd have some zeros. That's our first one, I think. But yeah. I mean, we had a discussion. I believe it was Brian who said that the rear felt very unstable as well. Was that something you felt, or was that just a setup thing for Brian? Do you think?
yeah, no, I think the rear was quite unstable. It was all very, and obviously that combined with having to fuel save as well. I feel like it was a lot of just waiting for the car to rotate and then just only accelerating on the straights. That's all I could do. Because the moment I tried to accelerate on the corner, yeah, like I said, I was just practicing to drift every time.
Yeah, that's fair enough. It's one of those. I think we talked about tyre wear as well. Was there? Do you think that affected you towards the end of the race? It was really affecting a couple of the drivers further up, the likes of Dan and the likes of Dan and George as well. Was it affecting you that badly?
Do you know what? I don't think it was. After I changed the last set of inters, I kind of just said, you know what, I'm gonna make it. So I didn't even check my tire life at one point, any point with that last spin. And I think I was so focused on trying to overtake Dan that I just didn't even really consider it. It was staying stable in terms of when I learned how to, I spent the whole race trying to figure out how to drive it. And by that point, I don't think there was any thought about what my tires were doing. It was just, it's wet, try and drive it as sensibly as possible.
That's fair enough. It was one of those races, I think, that was a little bit more difficult on paper than it arguably should have been. Owen, have you got anything before I let Connor go?
No, covered it again.
Perfect. That's what, 3 out of 3 today, or more than 3 out of 3 even today. Not doing too badly then. So well, hope you enjoy the rest of the evening. I will be bringing up the incident with Dan in a minute, but first we will be bringing in the race victor. George, talk to me about that race, and talk to me more specifically about how that one unfolded for you. Our race victor off track, at least. He's gone. He's gone again. He didn't want to chat. That's fine. We'll see what that one's about. But for now, I'm just going to try and bring up that incident for Dan. I've watched it. It did look. Kyle was very right. It was a very, very slow motion incident.
Yeah, it was very slow. I have watched it. It was almost comical. It was so slow.
I really don't know how that is a retirement, but I mean, at the end of the day, it was that. It's one of those ones where the F1 physics aren't necessarily the most realistic, and well, we can bring it to you right now. So he was heading through the Ascari chicane. This is on the last lap, and just went nice and slowly into it. A bit of a rear loss, and then a bit of a head loss, as you can see with his face cam. Very, very wonderfully poised in the corner as he potentially overcorrects, just hits that curb, and it just, from there was no coming back. And a very odd incident there for Dan. A very unfortunate incident as well. You can see how much that one position meant to him. A grave shame. But it is, as we know what it is, that is just what happens in racing sometimes.
Hello,
We've been rejoined, by George Chapman. You can hear us this time?
Hello. I can hear you.
Wonderful. Well, talk to me about the race.
Well, I mean, it was such a tough start. I mean, I was not expecting the rain. A lot of people didn't as well. So I think that's one advantage no one had. So starting the race was definitely difficult, especially on the wet. But I think pushing ahead definitely helped me out. I think when it came to the pit stops, I was a bit nervous because I knew the intermediate tyre wear. And I wasn't the most confident, and you can see that because I made 2 stops instead of everyone else. So I think maybe it just could have been a thing of I was pushing too hard or just needed to hit a little bit later.
Yeah, it was an interesting strategic battle, but in the end, you went through twice into the pit lane. Was there any was there any consideration of staying out? I know that I had one opinion. Owen had a very different, probably correct opinion about staying out and coming in. But was there any consideration of trying to stick it out to the end?
So when it came to my first pit stop, I realised that I was pushing too hard on the first pit stop, and I realised that my tyre wear was too high. And I said to myself through Bolliker if I could stay out one more lap, and as I said that, I nearly crashed the car, so I came right into the pit lane.
Yeah, that's fair enough. That's fair enough. I mean, it seemed to be one that was done on the fly. It's something else that was done on the fly was the strategies and the setups as well. Most specifically, what sort of wings did you end up going for? We've had a massive variety in wings and setups and all these sorts of things today.
So I'm not going to reveal too much, but I think I had 3 on my front wing and then 0 on my rear wing, which meant I just lost the rear and the corners more. It was just for more rotation, really, and it turned out to be good in quali and good for a little bit in the race, but later on onto the inters, it turned out to be the worst decision I've ever made.
Worst decision you've ever made, but still came out, 14 seconds ahead in the pits, and it was only blistering pace from Ethan that meant that you were reeled in. I mean, if that's the result of the worst decision you've ever made, then I think we're in for an exciting title battle then with Andrea Chenkovan not rocking up this week. So fighting talk there. But have you got anything before we go, Owen?
No, nothing from me. Covered it again.
Fair enough. Wonderful. Well, that's all of them, all but one tonight. But there we go. Thank you for joining us, George. And I'll let you go back to your chat in the waiting room now.
Thank you very much.
I've just cut him off there. That felt really rude. But anyway, that was the Italian Grand Prix here in APC. And, well, after a week break, we are back in APC with the second half of the season, of course. We will be heading to Singapore next week, as was alluded to earlier, with then the second sprint race of the season in Texas. And then we head to Brazil, and then USA, Qatar, or Las Vegas, Qatar, and UAE. There's too many USA races in this in F1 in general, but it is what it is, and all are to be a spectacle. 3 night races to finish off the season, and potentially Chenkovan taking the title, potentially Shackleton, who did close in today. We'll have to wait and see, but yeah, it should be a very, very intriguing end to the season. New competitors rising to the fore, and with Chenkovan not racing today, that has tightened up the gap at the top. So it's certainly not one you're going to want to miss.
We're underway and racing. Stay on the brakes, goodness me, what a launch! The outside of turn 1 and takes the lead of the race.